Japan, of course from Europe, and for us it's not so far, but all the people from our Americas. Korea, South Korea, I mentioned my friends there. Dear friends, well, as I was saying, welcome to all of you to Cica's Board and Assembly. In this opportunity in the beautiful and historical Mexico City. I would like to start thanking especially to Cmic's president, Mr. Eduardo Ramirez. He's going to join us a little bit later. And past president, Mr. Gustavo Arvalo. Thank you. For accepting with great willingness to host all Cica activities. Same gratitude for all the team that works here and have made us feel at home. I also want to mention Mr. Ricardo Plat, Mr. Gonzalo Delgado, for their strong support in strengthening the relationship between FIIC, Cmic, and Cica. Also, I would like to express my gratitude to all board and assembly members for their continuous effort in making Cica a real voice for the construction around the world and for taking the time to travel here, which shows their honest commitment to our confederation. I would like to give a special welcome to new formal members, the Chilean Construction Chamber, represented by its president, Mr. Sergio Torretti, and the Bulgarian Construction Chamber. Unfortunately, the president of the Bulgarian Chamber couldn't travel. This year, we will have our first assembly, a concept that was introduced with the approval of the modification of Cica's statutes on last November during our board council in Paris. Also, I would like to ask for a round of applause for Fanny Dastagu, who since the beginning has shown her commitment to Cica and from January has taken the position of General Director. Please, an applause for her. In the same way, I would like to thank Mr. Roger Fischerson for his commitment during his position as General Director and now as an advisor. Also, in the near future, we hope to count with a new engineer as part of the team. We are also celebrating the great effort done by the working group's chairman. Today, we have a clear position for each working group, allowing us to share it with all our stakeholders. I will continue to emphasize the importance of teamwork and how relevant is to listen and to take into account the voice of all countries that in one way or another are part of Cica. As Confederation, we know that infrastructure is a global main issue for the development of our countries and its economies, impacting on people and their lives. Last year, during our seminar, Meeting the Infrastructure Gap, we shared the global infrastructure deficit of $49 trillion, which is not a minor number. For this reason, during this opportunity, we will give some answers to this gap and how good projects have access to financing. During the seminar tomorrow morning, denominated Bridging the Infrastructure Gap, Funding and Cases of Success, we will count with the presentation of the representatives of the World Bank, Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation, and Mexican authorities, who will share their vision about this important issue. I am aware that for this last term of my mandate, many challenges remain. I will continue to work hard and committed, and I hope that with the support and motivation of all of you, Cica will be a stronger confederation year after year. I would like to make a toast to all of you and welcome to the Cica Board Assembly 2018. To toast, we need a glass of wine. Salud. Thank you. I don't want to stress all of you a certificate of membership due your commitment and support as member of Cica. So I will need
anyone needs Wi-Fi, the sign is Sala de Consejo. And the password is s.cmic.2018. If anyone requests the password for Wi-Fi, please contact me and I will give the password. Thank you.
Well, we are going to start with the assembly. First of all, Mr. Francisco Solares, the National Secretary of Cmic, is going to give us some words.
Thank you very much, Jorge. Welcome everybody to stay here in the Mexican Chamber of Construction. I'm sorry for my English. I need help for Richard, Jorge. I'm going to speak in Spanish. I'm sorry. Bienvenidos todos a esta Cámara Mexicana de Industria de la Construcción.
Ahí está Gonzalo ya. Bienvenido. Well, Paco's saying to welcome each and every one of you to the CMIC, which you have already visited the idea.
Bien. En nombre de Eduardo Ramírez, el presidente de nuestra Cámara,
Representing Eduardo Ramírez, CMIC President,
les doy la más cordial bienvenida a esta su casa. Los mexicanos ofrecemos la casa a todos los visitantes y con mayor razón ahora, amigos constructores.
he welcomes you, and please consider this your home. Mexicans, we are very much in that direction. We like to share our home. This is our home, but this is also your home. Welcome to your home in Mexico.
Nos sentimos muy honrados de que hayan escogido esta Ciudad de México y esta Cámara en especial para los trabajos de esta Asamblea, que en un momento más darán inicio. Y bueno, solamente una disculpa de nuestro presidente de la Cámara por no haber podido llegar a tiempo por compromisos de otras reuniones en este momento.
He says he wants to manifest his gratitude, the CMIC gratitude for you being here, and he apologized in the name of Eduardo Ramirez, who will not be able to make it to this meeting, but he will join us this evening. ¿Nos va a juntar a la noche? He is going to be with us this evening at the dinner this evening.
Así es. En la noche estará por ahí en la cena que tendrán y pues ahí los saludará a todos. Solamente quiero nuevamente darles la bienvenida y dejar a ustedes que inicien los trabajos de esta asamblea.
He thanks you again, and he wishes big success during our meetings. Thank you.
Gracias.
¿Tú vas a la noche también vas a estar tú? Sí. He's going to be in the evening too. Paco is going to be in the evening too.
Okay. Hello. From last year, we have been planning the strategy of Cica during this 2018. We did some changes inside our confederation. We have been working in the representativeness as we planned. We decided to work in the position papers of different working groups that finally are going to be presented today by every chairman. Finally, we have been working in the constant relationship with our stakeholders, participating in events and in personal meetings. The first change we informed was the new general director position, which we have been taken by Mrs. Fanny Dastagu, who started his new chapter in January of this year. On behalf of Cica, I would like to thank also Mr. Roger Fisselson, who constantly was contributing to all Cica matters during his position as general director. Today, we are grateful of counting with the knowledge and experience of in our cooperation as Cica and the President Advisor. Let's continue with Cica representativeness. As all of you already know, the Chilean Construction Chamber has started to be a formal member of Cica under the category of Gold Supporting Member from last December. The Chilean Chamber is an association of private companies whose principal goal is to promote the development of and stimulate construction activity, a fundamental lever for the development of the country within the concept of social market economy based on private industry. The Chamber also looks to support the well-being of Chileans, especially that of construction workers and their families, through its social network. This network has built through time as a set of entities focused in social action, which has developed thanks to generous contribution of the members, good management, and the patrimonial conciliation of the Chamber. I would like to ask for an applause for this new member. During the last board council held in Paris, we received the special request from the Bulgarian Construction Chamber to be part of Cica, a supporting member. Today, after the with the approval of all the members, I am very happy to give a warm welcome to the BCC as member of Cica. The Bulgarian Construction Chamber is a legal person established on the grounds of the Chamber of Builders. It's an independent, voluntary professional association and an official representative of builders in Bulgaria. Part of their objectives are the identification and transparency of the activities of persons who perform construction works, the improvement of construction activities management, increase the responsibility of builders with regards to the achievement of the essential requirements regarding construction sites and the quality of building structures, the protection of the interests of construction service users, and enhancing the qualification of its members. As part of the process to increase the representation of Cica worldwide, we continue with the plan on having a voice in Asia and Oceania. During March, I have a conference call with Ms. Denita Wong, Chief Executive Officer of Master Builders Australia, who informed us that the MBA is in the process of an internal board conversation about their Cica membership. Also, as we announced during our stay in Paris, we continue in the planification of Cica expansion in Asia through the ASEAN Construction Federation, ACF. Under this federation, we can find 7 countries associations that are part of the Southeast Asian region. This goal is part of my commitment before the end of the year. In relation to the incorporation of the AGC, we are still in talks for the re-entry as a member of Cica, the AGC from United States Association. In this occasion, I would like to thank for all the work and compromise shown by the members that constantly participate in the functioning of our SIC working groups. Today, we we will have the final presentation of the position papers, which will give us the chance to share our specific vision about the topics that for us are important to be heard by the world. For the approval of these papers, we define a process to clarify and hear all the opinions from our members. Today, every chairman of the working groups will be presenting the final documents, which will be the base of a continuous and modifiable work according with the new tendencies and requirements of our 6 working groups. In addition, as part of this assembly, Mr. Sergio Torretti from the Chilean Chamber, who has recently assumed the position of chairman of the Cmic Anti-Corruption Group, will present today a proposed anti-corruption policy that will serve us as a basis of Cica in relation to this important issue. As part of the work, I would like to ask all of you to save the documents presented today and share them with all our stakeholders. This is an important point which will help us to value the work done. I still have big challenges related to our stakeholders and members. One is to increase our channels of delivery to improve our internal and external communication. This effort has to be complementary with the position papers, which now are our entry point to participate in more events, conferences, seminars, where we can share our point of view. From December of last year until now, we have been held of a round of meetings that have been crucial for the understanding of our work and for the strengthened relationship with relevant institutions such as the OECD, UNICITRAL, BIAC, CIF, UNICI, IDB, EIC, FNTP, ISBE, CCA, LTIIA, and others. Even though we put efforts in our participation and meetings, many challenges remain. We need to work in many aspects that are related with share out the Cica position papers, create and distribute content from our future virtual library, get more visible in social media. All you can find Cica under the name of Cica Contractors on Twitter, also in LinkedIn. Get more involved with our stakeholders and between the members of Cica. And finally, continue to grow in representativeness. For all information and to save the date, our next assembly will be held in November 5th and 6th in Paris. Thank you. To continue with the assembly, Ms. Fanny will ask you about the approval of the minutes of the Board Council meeting in Paris last November.
Yes, thank you, Jorge. So the minutes of the last board meeting of Cica were circulated a few months ago, and you also have a copy of the minutes in your folder. So I would like to ask if anyone has some comments on these minutes.
Some comments, suggestions, changes? If not, we approve the minutes. Okay? Approved.
Approved.
Then we have the financial report that Daniel, the teacher, is going to give some information about that. Do we have a presentation? See, yeah, financial report. And also the figures are in our folder. Huh?
So you have in your folder the document which is on the board now, which give you the expenses and the income of last year, 2017. Then you have what we anticipated as the budget for 2018. What were the expenses and the income at the end of March this year? And knowing that, how we anticipate the end of the present year. So if we go on the different lines of this, we have office costs, which are on schedule. I remember you that we pay only part of the office cost because we got free rent and free cleaning from the FNTP in Paris. Then we have management and staff, which we know perfectly, and there also we have a part of help, hidden help from FNTP, because Fanny is paid only 55% by Cica, and in fact is working full-time now for Cica. Then we have travel expenses, which is budget. So we have a budget of, we spent last year 42 kilo euros. We had anticipated a budget of 40,000, and we spent already at the end of March 6,000. Then we have the website, a small expense, miscellaneous expenses, which are refunded, and you have the detail on the other page. Well, we have a total of expenses. In 2017, it was 151,000 euros. We anticipated a budget of 164. Up to now, we had expenses only for 25, but it's a quarter of the year, and we expend more for the end of the year. On the side of the incomes, we received the subscription of the European entities, that mean FIEC and FNTP. We are waiting for the others. We were waiting at the end of March for the others, received some since that date. And in order to make the equilibrium of the accounts, in 2017, we needed to get from friends 80,000. We got in fact 84,000. So that means that we had a profit at the end of the year of 4,483. For this year, the budget anticipated the need of having subscriptions from new entities and former friends at 92,000. We received a part of them. That means that at the end of March, we have a profit of 42,000, but we need to get, for the end of the year, all the total of 92, and in fact on that, we have received actually 23,000, and so we have to receive, if we don't wish to be debtor in bank, we have to receive 69,000 euros from partners and subscriptions. So that is for the forecast. So the forecast, we need, of course, to have more subscriptions, and especially if we wish to have an engineer, we have to find the way of financing it. If we look at the account for the last year, the accounts were audited. The end of the year showed a cash of 4,000, increasing the cash of the Cica in the banks. And you have on the, not the last page, but the page before the last one, you have the detail of the subscriptions we got last year, and you have on the board, you have the accounts, you have the balance sheet, the income sheet, and all that was audited last week by a special auditor, who is auditing our accounts since the beginning, and he had no objection of any kind to the numbers we showed him. And he said that, if we don't wish to pay the large fees of an auditor, he could make more simple auditing to certify the accounts. So in fact, the problem of Cica is what you have on the last page, the page before that one, is what you may have as member and friends of Cica subscriptions. So we are not in bankrupt, but if we wish to make some extra expenses, we have to find the money for that.
Questions? Suggestions?
We have 84,505,000. Why we have so big difference
Yes,
in
because
the planning?
we had some payments which arrived after the last day of the period. So we had an increase in the income between the end of March and now.
Yes, okay, I understand. Thank you.
Daniel?
Yeah.
So at the end of the year, our incomes are going to be compared with the last year, more or less the same or more? Should be more or not?
No, for the
Because
moment.
we have new members.
Yes, but we lost some members.
Okay, so the balance is
Yeah.
that we reduce
Yeah.
our incomes?
We lost a Turkish member.
Yeah?
We lost a French member.
Ah.
So we lost, and we have another one who we don't know if they will pay or not.
Yeah. So, but at the end, the balance with the loss of different members and with the new members is how much?
You have it on the schedule. You know, in 2016 we received 73K. In 2017 we received 84K, and for now we have to, if we wish to be on safe side, we have to receive 92, but for the moment we just take a provision saying we should receive the same amount than last year. But we don't know. Huh?
And do you have a talk with the Emre about the Turkish association? Did you have a conversation with Emre? Why did they getting out?
Yes, but in fact, we don't know what will happen exactly.
No.
And you know, Turkey has some internal problems. The contractors in Turkey too.
Yes? Please say with the speaker. Excuse me.
Daniel said that we lost any friends of Cica, yes, in this year, and we maybe will have a new one.
Sí.
But if we have any ideas to have to motivate new members to come to Cica, because I suppose we have to be effective if you want to have a good balance. I suppose that it's important to try to have a new members of
course,
friends of Cica.
We have to work.
If we have a way.
See, I agree with you. We have to have two different plans. First, to keep the members that we have today, recover the old members, and then add new membership. The new membership that we are talking are Australia, recover again United States, Singapore, and Malaysia. That's in our plan. But I think we should talk a little bit, because we haven't, isn't in a specific plan to talk with the members that they get out this year or last year, how to recover them. I think we should agree that we will have to add that plan and effort to recover our old members. Daniel, what's your opinion about how we can establish and agree on a plan to recover the old memberships of Cica?
Plan, I don't think that we may recover quickly a guy who left last year. Because if he left, that means that he found that he had other opportunities more interesting for him to put his money.
See, no, I agree with you, but probably we don't know why they did that. Whether it's a temporary decision or a long-term decision.
Yes, because they did not, maybe they were waiting from the crossing some exchanges. They were waiting to get some business, some new business they did not get. Maybe for instance, in the French companies, we have one, they understand, they don't speak fluent English. So
yeah, it's a problem for them.
They have a problem.
Yeah.
And so the people are wishing to have immediate results. If they didn't get their immediate result, some of them stay, others leave. And so in my opinion, it's more easy to get a new one than to recover a former one who decided to leave and who has to be away for 1, 2, or 3 years before coming back.
No, I agree with you, but we can do both.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Other opinion, please? Manuel? No? The what?
For individuals who want to help Cica, and in FIC, I appreciate all the FICs I go meetings, and I wish every country, if we could get every country to send $2,500, $5,000, whatever, we would be solving the problem. I know that with the effort of everyone, something positive will happen. But like Daniel says, the money at this moment is not there because some have not sent their checks or whatever, but still we have a deficit and we have to cover it.
Yeah, but in any case, it's an agreement where everybody agree that we need an effort of everybody to get more members and to recover the members that were before here. I think that's everybody agree in that. Okay. Then we have a Cica Management Activity Report by our General Director, Ms. Fanny Dastan.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to start by making a small summary of the recent mission that we had in Washington from April 19th to yesterday, for those of you who couldn't have the possibility to join us. So we went to Washington in the context of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank Group spring meetings. And in addition to that, we organized specific meetings for Cica members. Our delegation was composed of 15 members from FIC and FIEC. In all the meetings that we had, Cica President Jorge Mas could introduce our delegation, and also all the positions of the different Cica working groups have been expressed. So the first meeting we had was with the World Bank Vice Presidency for Operations, Policy and Country Services, and we had the chance to meet with the Vice President herself, Ms. Manuela Ferro. Was also there her team, including Enzo De Laurenti, with the Chief Procurement Officer that we have known for a few years now. So maybe it's a bit small for you to read, but I will anyway send you the presentations. So on this first meeting, we had the chance to speak about the World Bank's new procurement policy, which was adopted in 2016. And the main change of the new policy is that now it's not based on a one-size-fits-all approach, but more on a fit-for-purpose approach, together with achieving the best value for money. So in this context, the environmental, social, health, and safety requirements are becoming more and more important, and we wanted to discuss all these topics with them. We also took this occasion to promote the Source platform that I suppose you are all familiar with, since it's been a few board meetings we were talking about it. And even Mr. Christophe Dossard, the CEO of the Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation, came here to visit you in Mexico. We also spoke about the fight against corruption, and Christian Vial presented and Sergio Toretti también. Sorry, why do I speak? And Sergio Toretti also could. Your name is associated with Spanish. Could also present the FIC anti-corruption policy project that we are developing. Then after that, we had another meeting with the International Finance Corporation. We met with Pierre Pozzi di Borgo, who is the Chief Industry Specialist, and also his colleague, John Graham, who works in transport for IFC. With them, we had the opportunity to discuss the public-private partnership trends in particular in Africa and Latin America. So they explained that for IFC, they are very present in Africa because this is where they are most needed. but also in Latin America, even if in Latin America there are more private investors already there to invest in the projects. Then we also spoke about blended finance and other innovative financing instruments. And here again, the idea of IFC is really to go to projects where they really have an added value and they can help structuring the projects, but they don't want to crowd out the private investors. And also to be noted that IFC really support very large projects, and they usually take tickets from 20 million because there are fees for that. Then we had a meeting with World Bank Vice President Global Teams, Artvig Schaffer, and his team, including Jordan Schwartz, who is the Director for Infrastructure and PPPs and Guarantees. So again, with them we discussed the private participation in infrastructure, but also with José Carlos Martins and Fernando Vernalia, how to increase the participation of medium-sized companies in international infrastructure markets. And they were very supportive of the idea and explained they also work in how to better organize the projects, even by splitting parts of the projects to contribute to the participation of medium-sized companies. And finally, thanks to José Carlos Martins, we had the chance to meet with Joachim Levy, who is the Managing Director and Chief Financial Officer of World Bank Group. And this was a very interesting meeting, and he was very supportive of Cica. And we spoke also about the quality infrastructure concept, he encourages us to follow on this concept, which will be one of the basis of the discussions for the G20 and the B20 task force on infrastructure next year in Japan. So for all what's related to this mission, I will send you a complete report so you can all have all the information. And while we were in Washington, we also had the opportunity to participate in B20 Argentina meeting that occurred in Washington. So some of us participated in the B20 Financing Growth in Infrastructure Task Force on April 19th, and others participated in the Compliance and Integrity Task Force. So I will let Fernando Lago, who is our expert on the B20, to speak about that.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to those of you who participate in the B20 meetings, in the physical one of the last week and in the teleconference one during the year. I can say some details about the B20 process in Argentina, off the record, I could say. The B20 Argentina has record figures in registrations. There are more than 1,400 registered experts participating in the 8 task forces. We have a slow, late start. It was difficult to put this in walk to walk, but now I think I am more optimistic, and I think it will grow better and advance. The process is taking speed and depth. Really, the policy essential concepts were too much dependent of the knowledge partner that each task force has. This means some difficulties in the starting of the work, because each of the consultant firms who works pro bono tries to establish their own interests and policies, so it's not very easy to get to some concrete work. In the infrastructure-related issues, I can say that the Argentine government established 3 pillars. One of these is infrastructure as an asset class. The other one, the future of work, of the work in the future, and sustainable food. I think that infrastructure as an asset class and the future of work are of big interest for Cica. Luckily, the position of the Argentinian government is very strong, very common interest with us, with our own interest. The ministerial track of the G20 that gathers the presidents of the central banks and the ministers of finance of the 23 countries represented in the G20 are seriously involved in the infrastructure financing. And in more detailed aspect, we are now getting to the point where McKinsey, that is the knowledge partner of the Financial Growth and Infrastructure Task Force, has accepted some points oriented by the construction sector interest and including it in the position paper draft of the task force. I can say also, and some of you that attended the last meeting in Washington could say that the banks and the financial representatives had a bitter reaction against the initial position paper because they wanted to make a special point about the bank regulation, and we think that their main interest is to defend the bank system from the fintech. But now we are trying to negotiate, and I think that we will arrive to equilibrium, and the final paper will reflect the interests of our industry. But this depends essentially of our effort. So I will be very grateful with the contribution of all of us, of all of you in the task force. Thank you.
So coming back to the multilateral development banks, at the beginning of this year, we had the chance to have a meeting with the head of procurements of all the multilateral development banks. This was via conference, but they connected us to the World Bank so we could participate in the meeting. And the heads of procurements really expressed their interest in receiving feedback from the contractors. So they are really keen on developing the dialogue with us, and we will take this chance to continue exchanging with them. I have made a complete report of this meeting that has been sent to you, and I will resend it to you. They also offer to organize a joint event. I think it was already evoked in our previous board, but it seemed to be confirmed when we spoke a few days ago with Enzo De Laurentiis, the Chief Procurement Officer, that we could organize what they called an industry conference, meaning gathering MDBs, us the contractors, also FIDIC, and maybe even also the clients' countries. So we will keep you informed about that. We also participated in the Global Infrastructure Connectivity Alliance first annual meeting, which took place at OECD and in Paris, and a lot of people from the MDBs participated in. And then the last point on the MDBs is that the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the bank that's located in Beijing, is now organizing a consultation on their new complaint handling mechanism So you have the link for the documents of the consultations. It is related to all what's linked to compliance, so maybe it's really interested for us to gather information and write them a common position. If you think it's useful, please send us your feedback. Then about well-prepared projects, as I was saying, we are strongly supporting the initiative of the Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation, the Source platform. So we had met with Christophe Dossaps, with Cica President Jorge Mas. Christophe Dossaps went here to Mexico, as I evoked, and we regularly participate in their strategic committees. Talking about well-prepared projects, also Michel Desmar from France is continuing the promotion of the concept at the level of the World Road Association. Also linked to well-prepared projects, we have the topic of the contract conditions, which seems to be of great importance to Cica. For many years you had relations with FIDIC, and we would like to reinforce this relation with FIDIC and more systematically comment all their new books and documents. So recently they have published their draft new book on what they call Emerald Book. It's for all underground works. So we, as Cica, would like to also comment this book, and we sent an expert from Chile, Roberto Morrison, to contribute in the EIC working group that they have on contract conditions, so we can express a common position on the Emerald Book. Also, we have reconnected with the DRBF Foundations for Dispute Resolution Board Foundation by supporting a conference that they organized in Paris on the use of dispute boards. They will also have such a conference in Japan in May, and Mr. Yamaguchi will be a speaker in their event. So it's good to keep the contact with this organization. Finally, I also participated in the European International Contractors PO meeting, where we could discuss all these issues. OECD and BIAC meetings. For Cica, it's very interesting to participate in all these meetings. So with Cica President, we pay them some specific visits at the end of the year 2017. In particular, we met with the International Transport Forum, who invited us to attend their forum that they will have at the end of May in Leipzig. And they are also very interested in getting the feedback from Cica and from really what's on the ground on the contractor's point of view. We also met with the BIAC, which is the Business and Industry Advisory Committee to the OECD, and they are very interested in working with us with all what's related with anti-corruption. These are other meetings we participated in. Roger Fizelson participated in the one in London, and OECD are working and developing works about what's related with standardization. So it's also linked with the creation and development of the infrastructure asset class, and we will provide you with all the contents of this meeting. And finally, there was a meeting in March on governance of infrastructure and senior PPP and infrastructure officials. So some of Cica members participated in, and they also insisted a lot in the second meeting on capacity building of the public agents, especially at the local level. United Nations, as you know, we have been working closely with UNICE. We keep good contact with them and are interested in receiving our feedback also on corruption, and they are developing a lot of work with China on the Belt and Road Initiative. So we were interested in learning about what they are doing. We also met with UN Citral for all what's linked to PPPs. And Fernando, I'm sure you are also following up these works. Now talking about what's related with sustainable construction and fighting against climate change, we met with International Initiative for a Sustainable Built Environment. And there are also, as Cica, we are a member of the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. And they are also a member, and we agreed to exchange information together. Finally, we have continued working on all what's related to the long-term financing on infrastructure. Roger is still very involved in that. So I will provide you again with all the reports that he has been writing. But in terms of organization, with Cica President Jorge Mas, we went to visit the Long-Term Infrastructure Investors Association. I don't know if you remember, but at last board we spoke about it and saying that it's important to have contact with them. So we met with them and we agreed to have common works. For the Cica organization update, all has been said by Jorge, and I will make a specific report on communication later in this meeting.
Hello, thank you, Fanny. Well, as you have seen, Fanny is doing a lot of work under his new position, and I would like to hear some comments or suggestions. But in my general conclusion of these meetings, we have proved that all the meetings with the World Bank and with every organization, we have proved that the guidelines of the different working groups, of the Cica working groups, are in line with all the ideas of the World Bank or the OECD or the different organizations. So I think it's that we are in a good way how to do our work. Of course, in all the meetings that we have, appears a next commitment. So we go to some place, and of course we have to agree something, and that means more work. Because of that, of course, we have a talk that we will need somebody to help us in the team. Some question? Fernando?
Course about financing infrastructure, I had a good surprise with the participation of Mr. Sushenko from the long-term financing investors. He is really an expert in the financing of infrastructure. He represents big stakeholders in the industry of the financing of infrastructure via PPP or by other means, but it's a very important relationship. I want to say thank you for this, and we should increase this relation.
Mr. He's from the LTII from France. It's an important organization that
he is
we have
an
to
active part of the task force, and he has information about the global investment in long-term financing that this institution of the long-term financing institute gathers.
Sí.
No?
Well, it's an organization that we have met with them, and we are going to continue working together. And we are going to invite them. They invite us to their next meeting, and of course, on November, they are going to participate in our seminar.
They will be present
Paris end of
28.
May in the B20 meetings in OECD.
Okay.
Yes, for instance, they co-organized the meeting of OECD on governance of infrastructure. They were the ones who co-organized. And is interesting to know also that they are very small staff. They are only two, almost like Cica. They have very strong memberships, but there are only two in the organization, so they are very interesting in working with us, so we can strengthen each other. So we will follow your advices on that.
Okay. Any other comments or suggestions? Even okay.
President?
Right.
Oh, okay.
It's working.
Thank you. I'd like to make a short comment about the B20 you
B20?
mentioned on the presentation. And I knew that we're going to have the G7 and the G20 in Osaka next year.
Mm.
And I don't know where, I was not aware about the B20, but I heard that we're going to have a B20 in Japan too. I don't know which city that will be held, but I'd like to talk to the Cica secretary and Dafani and what we can do for the Cica during the B20 meetings next year. And also, well, she said, Fanny said about the DRBF in Tokyo, and they're going to have the DRBF meeting in May, actually this year, so next month. And I'm going to have a very short presentation during the DRBF. And the Okaji is we have a very strong interest to how to reduce the risk after making the contracts, because we have so many problems to cope with, and we hosted the DRBF meeting in Tokyo, and well, maybe I'd like to report after the convention. Okay, thank you.
We appreciate that. Fernando, I understand Japan, the past presidency, Argentina, and the future president are part of the team of the B20.
Is it a tradition in the G20 that there is a troika? It's established by the last president, the former president, the nowadays presidency, and the following one. So the Japanese representation is already working in the G20, and they have some representative in the B20. And they are, in the matter of infrastructure, they are introducing the concept of quality infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you. No more comments? Okay. So we continue with the presentation and discussion about the anti-corruption policy. Well, Mr. Sergio Torretti from the Chilean Chamber of Construction, that now is, as you know, a supporting member. Sergio is the chairman of this topic in FIIC, chairman of the group, the working group. So he offers us to establish a base of discussion to have our own anti-corruption and integrity policy during the year, because it's a very important and essential topic in every conversation with the World Bank, with every counterpart, the OECD or the European Union, everywhere. The integrity and the anti-corruption policy is a key point to start any conversation. So, Sergio, we're very interested in your presentation.
Thank you, President. All of you have in your carpet this same presentation. I'm going to give it to you today. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to talk about corruption. As leader of the working group on this thematic at FIC, we have been reflecting on the serious effect corruption brings to our lives. There is more than enough evidence of the danger we are facing if we leave corruption alone. This is the moment to act. I will start by giving one of the multiple definitions that exist as the OECD declares. It says, corruption is the abuse of public or private office for personal gain. It includes acts of bribery, nepotism, or state capture. It is often associated with and reinforced by other illegal practices, such as bid rigging, fraud, or money laundering. Why is so urgent to fight corruption? The World Economic Forum estimates that corruption increases the cost of doing business by up to 10% on average. As a result of corruption, investments are not allocated to sectors and programs which present the best value for money or where needs are highest, but to those which offer the best prospects for personal enrichment. According to the IMF, the investment in corrupt countries is 5% lower than in those countries that aren't. The World Bank estimates that each year, $20 to $40 billion is stolen through high-level corruption from public budgets in developing countries and hidden overseas. Corruption in political processes like elections of party financing undermines the rule of the people and thus the very foundation of democracy. Our role as a trade union is to influence public policies. To achieve this goal, we must start understanding what happens with our associates. The basis of ethics is in the people and companies that they make up, not in the trade association. In this sense, this is a first challenge that we must inculcate in our partners. Likewise, as an organization, we must set the example internally to be able then go out and influence our society. Our proposal is built from this premise, and we want to share with you some concrete measures that can be of help within the members that make up this organization. Fighting corruption is not easy. It requires a systematic view of the problem. To ensure that all of society participates in the benefits of globalization, we must create an environment that promotes integrity in transactions between governments, companies, and citizens, to generate more opportunities in order to reduce inequities, to bring the benefits of globalization to all. International cooperation is essential for its prevention, investigation, and prosecution. Traditional approaches based on standards have shown limited effectiveness. A strategic and sustainable response against corruption is public integrity and transparency. We must move to a new stage in the fight against corruption that appropriately takes advantage of the technological tools that exist today. Combating corruption can mean many challenges for Cica. In order to put a sense of reality, I would suggest the following actions. We should start by establishing a working group with a clear position on this matter. Then, we need to agree on an ethics code and establish an honor tribunal that can sanction those companies that have inadequate behavior. To facilitate this, we need a whistleblower hotline that can help affected companies report the situation. We also have to work on a set of indicators that measure and control transparency. In this challenge, we are not alone. We will promote collaboration between counterparts in FIEC and FIC. Also, strengthen our relation with relevant players as OECD, World Bank, and World Economic Forum to ensure the use of appropriate standards. We should consider joint actions through seminars and forums that can permeate and educate on these issues. Towards government, we should promote well-prepared projects, truly studied and structured. Additionally, we should support some new technologies and building information modeling and bidding platforms. As you can see, we have many challenges ahead, but I believe these concrete measures can be of much help to us. Thank you once again for this invitation, and I hope we can continue working closely in this matter. That's it, Mr. President.
So, Sergio, I think it's very good, the concept you have shown us. I think it's important to listen some opinions. Jean-Louis, do you have some, Jean-Louis? What's your opinion about this topic, the importance and to form here a working group to develop this topic and have our own policy to our members?
At the end of the presentation, Sergio said we have to work together with other players, and namely he said OECD, World Bank, and the World Economic Forum. I think it is the first action we have to take, because there are a lot of work about that. Important is that Cica is able to say something about what we are doing. We will not solve all the problems of corruption worldwide, because it is complicated. But we have to deliver a message saying we support everything done in order to reduce the corruption in every country in the world. And I think it is a very good basis you have produced. We know that the OECD is working a lot about that. We have felt during the contacts we had last week with the people of the World Bank, they are very interested in hearing us as a Cica saying something about that. And I think the basis you have presented is a very good basis for FIC and FIEC and others, Korea, South Korea, Japan, to deliver a message. We will not alone solve all the problems, but we can help our member federations to find the courage to say hard words about the corruption in order to change in every country the systems, because there are systems, they are different in every country. Important is that Cica supported everything that is made against corruption.
Thank you, Elvi. in the forum that we have been the last time in Europe and the OECD, in the World Bank, here in America, it's a very important topic. In Asia, it's the same, it's the first topic that appears in every meeting of related with the infrastructure development, or not? We'd like to know if in Asia or in Korea, this point is so, appears in the first point of every meeting. In the World Bank meetings was the first point in every meeting. In the OECD, the same. In here in America, in Europe, and everywhere. So I would like to know if in Asia or in Korea, South Korea, is more or less the same. What's your opinion?
Your meeting about the corruption issue is done in the first of the meeting? Actually, it is not, as far as I know. And we had a lot of corruptions a long time ago, but nowadays, I think same to Japan and Korea, it's about the same. There was a lot of fighting against corruption, and it has been reduced so much, especially last presidency and the last presidency. There was some corruption issue especially in civil engineering, and all this corruption issue has been settled down almost to zero, as I can say, in Korea. I think same as to Japan as well. But in the meeting, I think this is a worldwide issue, but we don't raise not much like this.
Okay, thank you. Japan, the same, okay?
Well, okay, thank you. Well, this kind of project is very important because we have so many bad things in, I should not mention about the names of the countries, but for example, in the African continent, and we learned a lot, and we need collaboration. We need the power of the communication with the members of the Cica, and we should have the sort of the common sense, and we should be. You said we should have the courage to have a common sense in this field. Okay, that's my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Christian?
Hello. Just two comments. One is that after the meetings that we had with the World Bank, and it was mentioned here just some minutes ago, the feeling is that the associations can play a real interesting role in society, in the sense that these big institutions like World Bank, World Economic Forum, or OECD play at a very high level, but don't go down. So many times things just finalize in a paper or in a theoretical discussion, and there is a possibility, a very interesting possibility for associations that work with companies, with real companies, to bring all these concepts to reality. And that's why the proposal that has been shown to you thinks in that way and say, how can we propose concrete things? So I believe that we can be a very interesting player and help bridging the distance between what World Bank or other institutions say and reality, and what really happens in the real world with companies. So I think we can play a really interesting a paper in this issue. Also, I think there are, although the problem of corruption is complicated, is difficult, offers also another side. There are a lot of companies doing a lot of things and very interesting things related to ethics, related to fight against corruption. So we also have the opportunity to learn from what other companies and big companies are doing in the States, in Europe, probably in Latin America also, and in Asia. And we should maybe try to come up with those good examples that can also be a guide for what FIEC, FIC, and Cica can do with their members.
Thank you, Christian. I think it's important, what do you say about how to go down with how we implement these principles or these policies. I think it's very important because one or two or three companies can affect the complete sector. We have a very good, bad example in Brazil. 5 companies or one company affect mainly the continent. The continent. All the public works in South America are almost stopped because of the effect of the bridge. One company, probably less than 50 people, affect the complete sector. So it's an important issue. Is what we're talking about. I will ask Jose Carlos. He has suffered like an association and other bridge problem. He can give us some recommendations how to proceed.
I'm talking Spanish and my traductor is the George.
I will do my best.
La corrupción no es una cosa sola. Es un conjunto de acciones, es un conjunto de factores que se llevan a una convergencia en la corrupción.
That the corruption is not only a single action; it's a complete strategy to go ahead.
Exactly. Is the corruption is the relationship the sector público and
it's
el privado sector.
Of course, in corruption, you need two parties, the public and the private sector. It's not alone.
¿Cómo se da la correlación? ¿Cómo se hace el financiamiento de la sector de política, como es electoral, como esto es hecho?
See how we combine the force to reduce the problem with the politicians, the public companies, and the private sector.
Porque se há la necesidad, de alguna forma, se há esta corrupción.
Because, well, the results we can see.
É porque existem várias formas, vários modelos. Este processo que passamos em Brasil, se apareceu muitas coisas que jamais poderíamos imaginar que tendríamos.
Claro. The problems that appeared really was out of our imagination.
Existia uma estrutura, um edifício de 13 andares, com a estrutura solamente para coordenar este processo.
Sí, and they very well structure all the system to get the money and pay the different actors.
Havia um banco de uma única agência em Brasil, mas operou muitas filiais ao largo do mundo.
Sí, one bank in Brazil connected with other banks in the world.
Haciendo las transferencias, haciendo todas las transacciones, via la persona, via sua empresa, via um parente, via alguma coisa assim.
What happened? Well, it was a really a very good coordination between all the banks, the person, the companies, and a lot of people. It's not easy to imagine. To imagine no sé, 10 banks in the world, a lot of people working in this process, a lot of companies, a lot of politicians. So really incredible.
Incredible. And digo porque es muy sofisticada lo proceso.
A sophisticated process.
E muito pouco se conoce.
And we know only a little bit about that.
Toda a plata estava depositada em Suíça.
All the money was in Switzerland.
Protegida por blockchain.
Protected by electronic systems.
Ok? Então, lo digo porque é sophisticated, não é simples como nós pensamos ser.
Many engineers in the business.
No.
Como? Many engineers in the system.
Exactly. Digo todo porque é necessário cambiar o modelo de la execución de la relación del sector público con el sector privado.
So, at the end, we need to change the model, how to approach the projects between the public and the private sector.
E não há coisa melhor do que a transparência, que a competitividade e a tecnologia.
The better principles are the competition, transparency, and of course, we have been talking, it's from my side, open the market. If we close the market only to a few companies, we are going to get in problems. So the opening of the market to get more participation and more competition is a key point.
Exacto. Desse ponto que Jorge falou, concentração de lo financiamento e de los contratistas, sí, es lo peor, porque tiene una conjunción muy cerca un do otro, y se hace todo se cría, como se creó en Brasil, una dependencia mutua del político y de las empresas.
Okay, so it's clear that we have to change, and it's very bad for our sector to allow the concentration of the market in a few companies, and also the financing. But at the end, José Carlos has his personal experience in the association. I know you last year you delivered ethic code or a big document how to proceed now in Brazil. It's product of the experience. So at the end, I think it's a point that we have to agree to form a working group, and I propose that Mr. Sergio Torretti can be, if the Assembly accepts, can be the chairman, and I would like also to nominate some representatives of different areas. So probably somebody of Asia, Japan, or South Korea. All the meetings are virtual meetings, so it's not difficult to join. And because it's important that we have opinions from different places. Of course, Jose Carlos has the experience, and somebody of Europe. So somebody of South Korea or Japan. South Korea or Japan to be part of the working group. Japan? Yeah. Everybody agree with you? Okay, thank you. And from Jose Carlos, okay. So from Europe, Jean-Louis? Yeah, somebody, you will look for a name. So I think Sergio, you know which are the representatives now, and I think it's important that to have a draft as soon as possible, because it's a key, really key point. Mr. Sergio. The speakers don't want to.
Thank you, President. I agree to form part of this group, and I'm really convinced of the importance of this theme. And I think if we work all together, our chambers of construction, FIIC, FIEC, and Cica, all talking the same language, will give a great opportunity to put this theme in the table for all our chambers and all our countries. And if we work together with the World Bank and all the other international association, I think we are going to be able to advance in this challenge, that it won't be easy, but we must start today affording this problem in our society. So
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you very much. Well, now we have a coffee break only for 15 minutes, and we continue with the presentation of the position papers. The presentation of the position papers. Well, the idea of this part of the assembly is that they receive the different comments, suggestions, etc., and also we'll have a time that we have to agree that we can receive some comments, written comments, for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So we are going to start with the multilateral development banks presented by Fanny. You know, the chairman of this group is Roger Fiserson, but he couldn't come here.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so I will present you the Cica position paper on multilateral development banks. So the general idea of this paper is to make like a synthesis of all the recommendations that were expressed by Cica for years. The idea when writing this paper was to use the vocabulary of the MDBs and their concepts to speak in the same language as them. Indeed, the targeted recipients of this paper will be the MDBs themselves, but also more largely to all the development finance institutions. So just to remind you the context, sorry. We are now in the context of the United Nations post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals Agenda, which is for the period 2015-2030. What's to be noted here is that for us as the construction sector, it's much more favorable than the previous Millennium Goals. Indeed, now again, infrastructure appears as the backbone of economic growth and development. And the idea of the paper was to emphasize that we have common goals with MDBs of developing projects which have the best impact on the poorest populations. So while writing this paper, I chose to divide it into 4 main topics. So I will quickly go through the 4 topics by evoking the different recommendations. So the first part of the paper is about the fact that Cica supports well-prepared projects with transformational impacts on communities. So the idea of this part is to promote one of our major concepts, which is well-prepared projects, and to attach it to transformational impacts on communities, which is a World Bank concept that you can find in all their annual reports. So for this part, the Cica recommendations are to systematically conduct in-depth socioeconomic studies, including for climate change and environmental impacts. Another recommendation is to improve the collection of data, because each time when we met with the economists from the IMF or from the World Bank, they told us that, okay, they have very nice models, but they don't have the correct data to put in the models. So then in the end we have based studies, especially in the poorest countries like in Africa. Then another recommendation is to involve all the stakeholders, including civil society organizations, to prevent conflict. So it's again the idea of very early involvement of all parties. And then we also made the recommendations of using project preparation tools like we do with the promotion of the source platform. So this was for the first part. Then in the second part, we tried to show that Cica promotes a long-term vision for sustainable development. So here again, the concept of all these institutions and a strengthened local private sector in the aid recipient countries. So here, the first of our Cica recommendation is to include the environmental, social, and governance criteria in the contracts financed by the bank. This way, it's also a way that what our companies do have a price and are fully paid for the requirements that are included in the contracts. It's also a way to have a better selection of reliable contractors. We also promote the inclusion, recommend to have clauses for all what's related to technical and managerial professional training of the local workers in the countries. And finally, for this chapter, we, at Cica, encourage the facilitation of medium-sized contractors' access to international infrastructure markets, for which we have a specific paper. Then in a third part of the paper, we focused on the fact that Cica encourages blended finance and adequate use of public-private partnerships. So our recommendations for this part are that we need to have an increased recourse to different forms of PPPs, but the fact that this requires to have a clear and stable institutional and regulatory framework, and also to make significant and continuous efforts to strengthen capacity building actions. And this is developed in Fernando Lago's paper. The second recommendation is to use blended finance to catalyze non-developmental finance for public sector infrastructure projects with sovereign borrowers. Then, in the final part of this paper, I chose to focus on the fact that Cica advocates procurement, fairness, ethics, and anti-corruption. So the first recommendation I wrote was about the legibility and the stability of the investment climate, but also the recommendation for MDBs to fight against abnormally low tenders, and finally, to fight against corruption. On this third recommendation, more in detail, we recommend, in general, to address the borrower side, for instance, by including clauses of compliance with World Bank integrity in the loan agreements. And then, still in the fight against corruption, we recommend to use the concept of responsible stakeholders conduct instead of responsible business conduct. So here again, it is to address the demand side. So here you have the main points of the paper. And please feel free to ask me anything, any questions you would have on this paper. Thank you.
Some recommendations, some suggestions, because these are really, if are all the different questions and positions that along the history we have a talk with the different multilateral banks Fernando?
To call your attention about the data collection by the MDBs. In our work in the B20 and in the financing growth and infrastructure, it is very important to know really what is the risk, what is the construction risk in the infrastructure projects. We think that the MDBs has access to a very big database. They shows us in the public web a lot of information about the projects, and they should have also the data about the performance of the thousands of projects that are performing now. If we can get the MDBs to open to the public the results of the performing projects, I think that the risks will be less and the cost of financing will be less. And so a big number of projects will be feasible.
Thank you, Fernando. It is something that I've tried to do to collect data since I'm working with, with Vinci and after more with CIF, to collect data from MDBs. The problem is that you have two parts in the MDBs. The part which is responsible up to the signature of the contract. They have studies, fine. And after the financial close, the documentation is passed on to the people in charge of recovering the money. And there is, in fact, no real contact between these two people. And the people are not following the exact cost of the project. After the documentation has been transferred from the, I would say, the initial part for the construction to the operation, everything is thrown away within the MDBs. They lose the memory, and after the loan is reimbursed, it is the same for the operation part of the MDBs, which means that, in fact, the MDBs, the database from the MDBs is extremely weak, and it should be one of our first job in Cica to see what they are doing actually and how we can improve to store the information. And it was one of the idea of Source is to have a support which will last years and years to accumulate information. But today, in the MDBs, there is no data, there is no memory.
Don't know how they fix the interest rate. So if they don't know what the risk is, it's maybe I agree. But it's
interest rate. It's a discussion in the credit committee. Everybody is just looking to have the approval of the upper level to be covered in case of catastrophe. They are not interested really in having the true information. Only some insurances may be interested in collecting data like Merck and keeping them. But in MDBs, it is extremely disappointing. But it is maybe something that Cica could do in going more into detail in working with MDBs.
We have been talking about the importance of the quality of the different bits and also the standardization. That it was the result of our concern about the Chinese companies. In which recommendation specifically that topic related
with China or?
See, no, because probably it's not politically correct to name the China, but the problem in our recommendation, where it is in detail.
Don't worry, it's really in.
Yeah.
So you will find it in the second chapter on sustainable development.
The second chapter.
On the first recommendation, when we say that we want to promote environmental, social, and governance clauses, it's also a way of aiming at that. By when I wrote for a better selection of reliable contractors, it means that in the bidding document there should be very clear requirements about high level of environmental, social, and governance. That would answer your question, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe also, when we have another real point in to answer your questions, is on the first chapter when we say that Cica recommends fighting against abnormally low tender. It's also a way of saying that we need to have, to not only compete on the price.
It's not only the price.
Yeah, that's what we say, that we need to check why the price is so low compared to the specifications. Okay,
thank you. Our comment, our suggestions? No? Basan?
We could just add one word about the importance of pre-qualification, and don't hesitate to refuse companies who have not the correct reputation. I don't say even documentation, because we know that many Chinese companies are forging documents in overnight and just to put, no, but to check really at the pre-qualification phase with whom the grantor is discussing.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is what is being developed by Germany and France with their bilateral agencies, and we could see that it's very efficient in fighting against abnormal Chinese corruption. So for sure, I can develop in the paper.
Can you hear? Yeah. Yeah, I would like to add the concept of life cycle, because, of course, quality has to do with when you're using the infrastructure or what the companies have been building or competing on a bidding. And that has to do also with to educate demand, to know what they're getting, measuring, I don't know, how much, for example, energy you consume, how much in terms of quality, or to look not only at the price at the time zero when you have the infrastructure being done, but also look the whole quality, the whole life cycle. Sorry.
Thank you, Carlos. Well, in any case, The position paper is going to have an extra time for all the members, all the position papers, 2 or 3 weeks, and then we will ask you to review in detail and send directly to Fanny your comments. So now we are going to have the second position paper, how to increase the participation of medium-sized companies in international infrastructure markets. So Carlos Martins is going to do a presentation. He's the chairman of the group, and it's a recommendation of the position paper that also was mentioned by Fanny. I don't know which recommendation it is, but it's there. And it was a very important point of conversation of all the meetings of last week, that really the World Bank and the IFSC are interested in the participation of the medium-sized companies. Miss, what was the lady from Portugal, the vice president, the lady Ferro. Yeah, she started the meeting with us to say that there were not interest of the company of participating in the bidding process. So, well, that was her opinion, that there were no interest from our side. So in any case, really they need the participation of the medium-sized companies to have a better competition, and of course to be aware of any type of corruption. José Carlos?
Okay, thank you, George. And the first is the contest. Yes, please. Okay, in the contest. No, it's the, okay. It's the contest. Medium-sized companies play an important role in the economic growth around the world. They are considered a key driver to boost economic development and increasing job creation, especially in emerging countries. According to the World Bank, formal SMEs contributed up to 60% total employment and up to 40% national income, GDP, in developing economies. The criteria to define a medium-sized company. In order to guide, Cica understands that companies' equity capital would be a suitable criterion to build a definition of medium-sized company under the context of those recommendations. Taking into account the recommendations below and what has been gathered from the infrastructure market worldwide, the range of estimated value for projects suitable for medium-sized companies would be between 50 million and $250 million. The group elaborated recommendations for a better support and accompanying of the medium-sized contractors. The group also looks at capacity strengthening actions delivered by international organizations, MDB and DFEIs, to improve medium-sized companies' management, financing capacity, and financial structure. And the abstract. The content of this document represents the institutional position of Cica related to branding the market share of medium-sized companies in the infrastructure sector. Cica understands that opening the infrastructure market to medium companies can enhance the quality of infrastructure programs and public services, in addition to bringing economies to public administrations. In such purposes, Cica has built some recommendations and policy actions that can support governments and relevant international organizations to address this issue. The recommendations aim at promoting. And the first recommendation is improving the legal and regulatory framework and institutional environment for the development of international infrastructure programs, as well as the participation of medium-sized companies in it. And one the principal. Second recommendations, encouraging the creation of bodies focused on developing infrastructure projects and diffusing good PPP practices and providing standards for relevant documentations related to the structuring PPP and concessions projects, so as to assist public entities, particularities the municipality is the local government, to conduct PPP programs. That's the second recommendation. Is the 2.0. Encouraging large-scale projects to be fractioned into smaller parts when it's economically advantage and technical feasible. Is the very important because is the size if you union is the many lots is this only big companies it's possible is this contractor. Next. Allowing and encouraging the participation of smaller companies through, oh my God, consortiums in PPP project, customizing legal and regulatory conditions to facilitate the participate in a consortiums and to favor a tax-friendly regime, creating tax incentive as deductibility spread clean. Taxes deductibility provides depreciation rate, etc. Is the many situations also is the recommendations and policies should be developed to increase the participation of medium in the infrastructure market. Next. Encouraging alternative methods of dispute resolution, such as dispute boards and arbitration, is the very important point. Encouraging the improvement of corporate governance standards from international demanding references of good practices, including establishing policies for effective compliance in order to promote better access for insurance and financing, and developing the associated capacity of business in order to facilitate the configuration of consortiums. Is link with the anti-corruption policy. And next. Well, okay. Thank you, George.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Jose Carlos. Well, also, it's important to mention that all the associations, the membership is 90% of medium and small companies. So the base of all our organization are small and medium-sized companies. Here in Mexico, in France, in the United States, in anywhere, it's the same. So I think it's very important also for our organizations or our associations. So I think it's an important topic to be considered in our conversation with the DBs. Opinions, suggestions?
Okay. I would like to say that I can join that working group about mid-size companies because from 30 years I manage a mid-size enterprise in Poland, but our activity we have in Poland, in Germany, in Sweden, in Denmark, in Norwegian. So I am sure that my experience can be helping for that
sure.
work.
For sure, I think we will be very happy if you participate and with Jose Carlos,
Okay.
and we can receive your opinion,
Fine.
because it's very important for
I'm
the support.
practical, you know.
Mm.
A practice is most important. Sometimes theory is very important, but practice the same.
I agree
Thank
with
you.
you. No, thank you very much. Seriously.
Il n'est pas un chiffre, son site n'est pas un chiffre.
Thank you. I think the intention is very good and the form is excellent. I small suggest for this position. It referred the small and medium enterprise for the PIB for the countries, because GDP, because maybe the 5 million is small for Brazil, but in Costa Rica no, it's not as small. It's medium, or maybe it's medium large, because maybe Salvador or other countries need refer 1 million, no 5 million. En español sería que la referencia que tienen ustedes de tamaño de empresas pueda referenciarse al PIB del país para que países pequeños puedan participar en estos programas con tamaños menores. También los proyectos son menores, ¿verdad?
I think, Carlos, that it's important that you send Jose Carlos your recommendation about the size, and of course compare with each country. And we agree that for the GDP, the small and medium-sized key companies. Okay. ¿Yo? ¿Tal vez? No, ¿o yo, Denise?
I would like to suggest we create a WhatsApp group so we can exchange in a faster way some suggestions. If you'd like, I can create a group, not to exchange emoji, but to exchange the real important things.
Okay.
Okay.
One more? Okay, thank you very much. Fernando.
Suggestion about the small and medium enterprise. In the Argentinian Chamber, we are trying to develop this sector, and as Jose Carlos said, the sector is very important in the employment, or for the employment, and in the GDP. But I think that we should strengthen the fact that they are very important in the innovation. They are the fountain of the innovation in the industry all over the world. Not the big companies, but in the garage, they say, the innovation starts. So it's easier to get innovation in the small and medium enterprises that are who has a leader that is a person, a
Sí.
physical person, and so it makes it grow.
Startups. Perfecto. Sí, I think the smaller company has the opportunity or the obligation to be more innovative. Thank you. Wisam?
Yes, maybe one remark. I know that everybody today is very much focused on PPP. PPP is only between 10-15% of the investment in a country. So these SMEs should focus, I would say, mainly on traditional contract. PPP is for a small company. It's certainly particularly difficult.
But also there are PPPs from local regional organizations like municipalities
Yeah.
or small airports are
And-
of the size of medium-sized companies.
Matching the size of the small company.
Mm.
Then the municipality have to be very well trained
Sí.
to see this kind of contract because
Sí.
they are a little complicated. So
Well, that's-
training of the public authority is key.
That is another general problem that we have in everywhere, that the municipalities, they don't have the team how to manage a small PPP or a project.
Exactly.
Sí, that's a problem that is mentioned in some documents too. Sí. Okay, so we go to the next position paper. It's, public-private partnerships, Mr. Fernando Lagos. Also, in all the meetings we had, it's mentioned that not the only, but the good solution to reduce the gap is the private funding system and with the PPPs. All the banks, all the multilateral banks think that the PPP is the way. So, Fernando?
Okay, the PPP working group has delivered a position paper, a draft position paper. The document intends to represent the institutional position of Cica related to the use of public-private partnerships, contractual schemes for the provision of infrastructure, goods and services. Cica highlights the social and economic importance of infrastructures, refers to the need to reduce the worldwide increasing infrastructure gap, and points PPP as a useful tool to handle a part of this task. The document refers the PPP scheme's concrete advantage when applied to suitable projects, their characteristics, their success conditions. Finally, the document expresses the institutional role Cica is dedicated to play regarding PPPs. As citizens and users, we know that the infrastructure gaps grows all over the world. Infrastructure is an unavoidable prerequisite for the quality of life and for the productivity of a country. It is the best tool for the fight against poverty and in favor of the compliance with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It requires significant investment, but it has a long useful life, so it is reasonable to finance it, avoiding an unfair intergenerational subsidy. PPPs can be a way to deliver infrastructure projects complementing public resources, always scarce, with contributions from the private sector. The private contribution alleviates public accounts, allowing to reallocate the releases public resources to social action, health, education, security. And private infrastructure investment authorizes a greater control and better management of the public debt, preventing its growth. In PPP, the private investment recovery can be made totally or partially by users' payment, which is more fair than doing it through taxes. But even when the payment is made by the state, once the project service is available, at the time of payment, the state and/or the community is already receiving the project's benefits. Private participation improves efficiency in the resource allocation and reduces the project total cost considering its entire life cycle. The unification in the private partner of the responsibility of design, construction, financing, operation, and maintenance is a powerful incentive in that sense. Regardless of the contractual form chosen, the private partner is at each stage under the control of the public authorities. The fiscal return generated by PPPs to government through corporate taxes, value aggregate tax, property taxes is also an important advantage of these schemes. PPPs create or anticipate the social and environmental benefits of the project. However, PPP is not an universal panacea. In the world, its impact on the total investment in infrastructure is around 20% in Latin America, around 10% in Europe. Its incidence may be somewhat higher in countries that are new to the system, as they may have accumulated a stock of proposed projects appropriate for PPP schemes. The PPP are long-term, complex contracts. They have a high initial transactional costs. Its implementation takes more time than alternative contracting methods for partial tasks. The contracts are characterized by private participation in funding and financing. Today is an opportune time because of the enormous mass of financial resources available in the world. In particular, the infrastructure asset must be attractive for investors who need a stable income stream over the medium to long term and protection against future inflation, since the incomes of the project are linked to the real economy of each future moment. This is the case of pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign funds. For a rapid development, it is required that the country receiving the investment has a clear and stable institutional and regulatory framework, ability to manage the process in public agencies and companies, and a deep financial market. But there is already a lot of experience in the world about PPPs, and lessons have been learned from successes and failures. Cica has been studying them since 2009, together with their member federation, Multilateral Bank, United Nations, with the contribution of experts from all over the world. The B20 process is an opportunity to do so. Cica is fully active in some of its task forces, particularly the Financing Growth and Infrastructure Task Force. There must be a pipeline, a continuous flow of resilient projects, well prepared in the technical area, well structured in the economic financial area to reduce risks from the outset so that they can be quickly bankable. A substantial contribution in that sense will come from platforms such as SEARCH or other equivalent ones. PPP contracts must be structured in a standard way so they can be securitized. This will generate an asset class acceptable for non-specialized pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds, investment funds, and individual investors. it is required that the risk be assigned in a balanced way to the party that can best assume them. In example, the receiving state must assume the risk of the current currency exchange rate, since it depends essentially on its cost. There must be fast and impartial contractual dispute resolution system, such as the technical panels, that follows the project since its beginning, and the arbitration courts regulated by international rules. For developing countries, there must be an intelligent scheme of investor guarantees. Examples of success are the TEFEI program in the United States for subnational agencies, or the subsidiary third-degree guarantee of the World Bank in the renewable energy plan of Argentina. So finally, the purpose of the working group for 2018 is to advocate for the system before governments, multilateral organizations, and markets, disseminate the current regulatory frameworks, successful models, and lessons learned to all the stakeholders in the sector, contribute to the strengthening of the capacity to manage projects in public agencies and private companies. And we will try to keep in contact with MDBs and AFAs, sharing technical resources and knowledge, developing innovative solutions for loans and guarantees.
Hello. Thank you very much, Fernando. Opinions? Suggestions? The only point that Fernando, that I think, I think everybody agrees in this table how to go with the PPPs. The only point that there is an idea, general idea, that the PPPs are only for big projects, and we have to insist that they can be applied in very small projects too. But of course, we need the capability from the public sector to do that.
Okay, we will add this point in the position paper, but I can say that in the B20 discussion, this is already a point, and the key element for this is the capacity building at the municipal level, no? And the other solution is to standardize the contract so that one municipality can copy the scheme from other or from the federal government.
Hello. And, a question, Fernando. This tool appears that is obvious for everybody, at least for us. Why has increased or have, for example, you mentioned that in Europe it's only 10% of the total investment in infrastructure, and the gap in Europe is big, too. Why? Which are the main reasons that the different governments don't do the right work?
I don't know if why. I think that is a group of there are several reasons. One of these is that the financial markets are very risky, have aversion to the construction risk. And so it's not easy to get financing and to get to a financial close in a great number of projects. But when the project is operational and the construction has finished and the ramping up, the first months of operation are on, it is a very, useful active. The companies sell their interest in the project very easily. And so that's why I said that it is necessary to really measure the construction risk. Because if we can measure the construction risk, we will get more funding for the construction, PPP construction projects. Because in the long term, when the project is operating, there is a lot of funds. I receive every day a paper or a notice from one of these information agencies, and every day there is operation of sell and buy of shares in a infrastructure operating project. So we have to solve the problem of the construction risk. I think the only way to do so is to measure it. Besides, there are some other projects that are impossible to do through PPPs. There are only it's only a way that some government has to hide their cost or their financing it under the lines.
And also there is a political
out of the budget.
There is a political problem too, because many politicians they think that when you have a PPPs, that the concessionaires are the owners of the different works, are the owners, and that is a mistake, because always the owner is the state, not the private.
We have a problem of communication there.
A problem of training the politicians too.
Yes, I would like, well, the document is very good, except maybe for some clarification which are needed in the first part about the funding and the financing. I will go into more detail in my presentation in a few minutes, but funding, if we take the classical meaning of funding at the IMF, with the IMF meaning, funding is who pays in fine for the works, which means that funding is related to the reimbursement of the loan. Financing is how to raise the finance, how to raise the loans and have equity. So you may have bad projects with financing if, for instance, the state gives his guarantee. You may, and if the funding is done by the end user, then, as said Fernando, it doesn't affect the budget. But if the funding is made like many PFI scheme in UK, and if it is paid by the state, then you one generation push debt over the shoulder of the next one. So the real difference in PPPs is the funding, who paid for the reimbursement of the loan, and not who is raising the money. So probably this text has to be adjusted with Fernando is the top problem.
Send me
yeah.
Thank you, Basan. So no comments. So now we are going to have the presentation of sustainable construction presented by Carlos Vasco.
Well, thank you. I'll resume the position paper you all have on your carpets and been working as a group, and please happy for any feedback you can give us now or later. Well, as a first part of our introduction of what we mean with sustainable construction, it's important to understand this is a whole life cycles construction or project, and that's basic on the sustainability. There's a very high demand on natural resources and energy that can make big impacts in environmentally speaking and quality of life. Construction as a whole represents about 1/3 of the global energy that's consumed in the world, and about 20% or 25% of greenhouse gas emissions. It's known that the growth of population and urbanization, the growth of cities, has been increasing and will be and will increase much more in the future, and that will demand much more energy and impacts through our environment. So it's important to understand and to realize this is a new topic, and there are ample spaces to improve and contribute. Cica, as part or member of the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, acknowledge that can significantly contribute on climate goals. So what do we understand for sustainable construction? Is any action or initiative that is incorporated through any construction work, through any of its stages, that can contribute in lower consumption on resources and energy, decrease the footprint of water and carbon emissions, lower impacts during the construction stage, and improve the quality of buildings and infrastructure. Well, and that, of course, will end on the quality of life for users. But there are some barriers and drivers for sustainable construction. Talking about barriers or slow introduction in this important topic nowadays. At the beginning is that projects are not carried out as a global context in early stages. There are very different realities in countries in terms of climatic impacts or demands, development levels, energy sources, or cost, loss, subsidies, and others. It's very difficult for them to generate models and regulations that are that you can apply globally. Among some drivers, well, we have economic drivers, legal, regulatory, corporate image. It's been taken into account, corporate image, and well, sorry, all this we can talk about later if you want, but some responsibility of the future, some subsidies that can be applied to start this topic to be more considered, requirements of financing sources for some investment in sustainability when this implies higher cost, but not necessarily implies higher cost, even at the construction stage, and of course if you consider all the life cycle, as we were talking before. And also, well, encourage the information for end user demand, among others. As Global Alliance for Building and Construction says is the building sector offers the largest cost-effective greenhouse emission gases mitigation potential with net cost savings and economic gains possible through implementation of existing technologies, policies, and building designs. Design of projects has a very big impact on how sustainable construction can be easily reached, and that has to do with what was said before about understanding or taking this as a global or as a global, seeing this on a global context. Among the objectives of this working group is to identify and disseminate and promote the use of the best practices in all sides of works, encourage and improve the level of sustainable construction, raise regulation demands when there are market failures, and promote alternative paths to regulations. Some example here can be promote certification, contractual models, and transparent information about the impacts of each work. Specific actions. There are about 10 I'm going to talk about you here. First one is analysis and assessment. Actions and elements that can impact in lower energy demands or other sustainable effects in any of its stages. Work on market recognition, show the real benefits, or as we said before, educate demand, educate bidders, and has to do with quality that has been mentioned here and on the World Bank meetings. Diffusion is to show good practices in business. This is good business when for some companies today or in other companies or in other sectors has been increasingly rising, and construction can be the same example. To promote certification systems, financing, loans with, for example, with better conditions when you have better sustainable impacts or impacts, yeah. Then we have we can apply or review contractual models where, for example, promote certification or bring to present value all the energy consumptions that any project will impact for users and quality in the future on whole life cycle. Work on increasing transparency and accountability, and so as to show the real impacts and any basic information about measurements on energy or water consumption or waste or whatever that can affect your environment, your future, the costs. Take into account local rules so as to promote actions according to local realities. There's a big difference between what's the realities and, I don't know, countries that have high levels of energy demand or water or GDP development in terms of income. So this can be considered as a reality, as a first priority, sorry. Then take into account global trends or as treaties or agreements. Global treaties have been taken for countries, and these are going down to ministries, to companies, to local regulations, to users, and that's going to continue changing. So it has to be. We might have an opinion or actions there, and finally, among others, subsidy to push this in the right direction. Finally, well, it's already said, but it's an important topic that multiple realities and great differences exist in different countries, so that has to be taken into account. There are a lot of successful examples in construction projects with lower impacts in any sustainable aspects. So that's serious, so as to implement new actions. And also take into account all that experience, which actions and how these are combined will depend on each reality so as to successfully promote. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. Opinions? In any case, it's clear that the construction sector has a big impact in the climate change. And also it's clear that the different countries has different speeds how to achieve the goals. But I think also in many associations, all the members says that they don't realize that the sector has a big impact. Because I only work in construction. I construct that something that is defined by other. But if we consider the complete sector, the design and the operation, of course, it's a real impact that we have in our sector. So I think it's an important issue.
Yeah, it is, and also it's so that's it has a lot to do with information to promote, for example, as was said here, good examples and information of the cost, and educate not only demand and because some global regulations have been applying, but not yet much on construction. And also in going down to the reality of companies don't really have introduced this yet. There's a lot of mythology that this is higher in cost, but when you apply this in the right way on the design process at the beginning, it won't necessarily implies higher cost in construction projects. So that has to be a lot to do and educate and contribute in diffusion of the positive aspects, not only the negative ones.
And also it's very important in the PPPs, because in the PPPs we work in the design.
Sorry?
In the PPPs, this concept is very important because the complete system starts with the design, construct and operate. So in that type of activity, it's clear that this concept is essential. Okay, thank you very much, Carlo. We are going to go to the last two position papers. The well-prepared projects is going to be presented by Ms. Ampiron. The chairman is Michel Demar. He couldn't come here. And then we have the long-term financing of infrastructure that Vincent is the chairman. So, Mr. Vincent.
Thank you very much. So the topic of the presentation is the famous well-prepared project, which has been started a few years ago by Cica. I try in that direction. Oh, where is the anywhere? This well-prepared project concept has been developed since more than 10 years. The idea is that, thank you. The idea is that the people who are dealing with the finance are saying that there is no well-prepared project and they cannot use the finance available. And the contractors are saying there are tons of projects and it is you who are not able to finance our project. So I attended a meeting in the European Commission, and the two people were not able to understand each other. So the idea of well-prepared project started by trying to give a definition which is common for the financial world and the contractual world, to say that when the project is well prepared, okay, the money can flow from the financial world to the contractual world. So it has been discussed in Thessaloniki, in Cannes in 2017, and it was quite recently in Berlin. And the concept applies for traditional projects and for PPP projects, both. In fact, a PPP project normally cannot be badly prepared, but it's valid for industrialized, emerging and developing countries. It improves transparency in the procurement process and should normally save time and reduce cost transaction. So process and document standardization, as it has been said before, are the key factor. So the concept is clear. Now, what is inside, it's more delicate to say. Let's start by the traditional procurement project. Now in developed country, the phasing of a project is as follows: between 20 and 30 years of project preparation. After, you have 2 or 3 years for work, and after 50 years of operation. If we can reduce the time of preparation, project preparation, from, I don't know, 30 to 10, it would be a great improvement. And I'm not joking when I say 30. You have maybe heard the airport Notre-Dame-des-Landes in France. I've worked myself on the project in 1973, and it has been cancelled 3 months ago. So this is an example of a badly prepared project. We have plenty of examples like that. So reducing the delay is a key point. And imagine you are contractor, we are speaking of a project, and like, I don't know, the Romanian motorway, it was due to be signed in 1955, and in 2005, and in 2010, and in 2015. It has never been signed and will never be signed. So if we can avoid losing time and money in making stupid bids, it would be great progress. So this is the idea of the well-prepared project. The additional idea is to develop the design-build procedure, to take the benefits of the experience of the contractors for design, build, and even operation, without the complication of the financing, like in PPPs. It is what is developing now in France, but probably in other countries, I don't know, just to keep the design, build, maintain, operate contract without the financing, which is polluting everybody in their mind. So the well-prepared project should show that, and the whole life cycle evaluation and so on. Then, for PPPs, we have additional advantages. The explanation to stakeholders of the need to recourse to this complex procedure. Plenty of countries are doing PPPs and stopping, then doing again, then stopping, according to the direction of the wind or to the last election of the president or to the level of interest rates. Well, if we can explain a little more logically what is positive and what is negative into PPPs, it would be fine. And this is a part of the well-prepared project process. Then you have the usual benefits like minimization of transaction costs. I regret that the contractors a few decades ago have left to the lawyers the management of the PPPs. Normally, us, the contractors, we should be the people saying what is to be done to the government. But the Ernst & Young, PwC, and this other bunch of lawyers are making a lot of money, which should be in our pocket, just printing the same documentation. If we reach this standardization of contract through the well-prepared project process, we can save billions, which are going in the pocket of our dear PwC and equivalent. So, proposing innovating solution, we will see this with Source. It's a discussion between the contractor as an engineering company and the grantor to find the best possible solution. This exchange of information, there is a typo, has to be done before tendering process, obviously. So, what we suggest, first to define properly the well-prepared project concept. It should be a list, a process, like the checklist of a pilot before takeoff. For the time being, it's a little cloudy, a little foggy in the mind of people. It should be clarified. And then the promotion of it has to be done by us as well, by other people like MDBs, like, the governments themselves, to get used to have this process, this mind, in their mind, there is a process which is called well-prepared project. And Source has been developed for that, to have this process for well-prepared projects. But Source today, and I can speak of that because I was responsible for it, is not yet in a position to be fully operational. Because, for instance, we have one template worldwide. We have no template by country. Obviously, if you are making energy saving in buildings, if you are in Mexico or if you are in Anchorage, it is not the same problem. From the legal point of view, it's the same. So, and as said, the guy in the World Bank, what's his name, Singh Rao, with a big turban, he's Indian, superb. He say, okay, it's a good start, but it has to be developed more technically. A better filtering and ranking of answers. For instance, for the time being, we are saying we are measuring the progress of answer without differentiating if the question is important or not. This is, from the technical point of view, extremely easy to be done, but it has to be done. The consistency check, we have spoken a lot about, but it's just a, beginning. We have a few tests, but we should have much more. And then the date-sensitive process, it is ready, but it has to be really implemented. So there's a lot of improvement to be done for Source, and this For this, we shall need your support. Your contractors should bring the help that CIF cannot have. And then the promotion of source, you know the exercise, you know Christophe Dossard, I will not come back on that. So you see the two axes in which for the well-prepared project we have to move: definition, promotion of the well-prepared project, improving source, and promotion. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Comments? Well, of course, in general, we agree that we need projects first, second, well-prepared projects, and it's the basic also to have a good portfolio, and that's a weakness of mainly all countries. They haven't portfolios, and they don't have well-prepared projects.
Exactly.
And it's incredible, but that's the way. In Chile, now was created the infrastructure fund, where the asset class, the PPPs are in that fund, and part of the incomes are going to be invested in have the portfolio of projects, because if not, there's no solution to the problem.
Well, it is true that Chile is an example. In fact, Chile has made plenty of experience and now has a knowledge which is very, very important. I saw such kind of knowledge in Rajasthan in India, where they are excellent also. But Chile, for us, well, it's our family, and we know that we have things to learn from Chile. But the well-prepared project concept, I think, should be repeated and repeated and repeated.
Promoted. With the governments, with the banks, with everybody.
With the banks, because it will decrease the interest rate. If an investor or a lender knows that the project has passed the test of the well-prepared project, then the cost he will ask for the risk will be lower. So here again, we are speaking of billions.
Okay, Vincent. So now we'll go to the last position paper related with the long-term financing of infrastructure.
So I go on. Javier?
Javier.
Okay. If you can start by the last slide, it would be great. I will explain you after. So it's up to me to go to the last one. Oops. Sorry. Yeah, that one. So what is the situation today in the financial market? I've worked a lot with World Bank, IMF, and I was part of IMF mission in developing country. It is the only way to understand what they are doing, this charming guy of IMF. So what we observe is that the world debt is increasing in a way which is absolutely unbearable. You see that the effect of the crisis of 2008, as a percentage of GDP, it has been stopped, but at a level which is much higher than the increase of world GDP, which means that we have created much more debt than welfare for people. And this was possible because the interest rate has been decreased up to negative level, which is completely stupid. But, well, this has been done. So the situation is that today we have a GDP which is growing, that's fine, 3-4%, that's great. but a debt level which is not really bearable. It is what said Christine Lagarde last week. She said, okay, I believe in the increase of GDP worldwide, but there is a huge danger, which is the debt level. So it's a little funny to say that, because you cannot have the increase of GDP if you have not the increase of debt. So we are now in a position which is, in the opinion of many experts, worse than the situation where we were in 2008. The next slide, please. No, maybe I can go this one. Just the next one. Okay, fine. No, this one. Yeah. So what happened between 1999 and 2006-7? You can see that after the crisis of 2008, the households, they are not stupid. It is their own money. They have stopped increasing the debt level compared to the GDP because they are obliged to reimburse. You have more or less the same attitude from the financial corporates, where you see that they have done absolutely crazy operation up to 2007. After 2008, there was the general collapse, and they came back to a level which probably is acceptable. But when we look at what did the governments and the non-financial corporates, it is just impossible like that. And this was the message from Christine Lagarde. Be careful, government and non-financial corporates, you are really going in a very bad direction. And when we are speaking of the long-term finance, nom de Dieu. Oops, I come back to the first one if I can manage. Sorry. 4. No? What happens? I would like now to start at the beginning. This was just introduction to give you the direction in which we have been working with Roger. So the statement, and this I come back to the difference between funding and financing. You see, finance is not a problem. It has been increased, because there are always a bank to lend money if there is a guarantee from a state. And then the problem, thank you, and then the problem is borne by the states. And after IMF come and say to the government, how is it possible to have 100, 200% debt on your balance sheet? So, what we look at this situation, the point one is identify the main financial obstacle to fill the infrastructure gap. It is the situation of the funding and financing. France, UK, Germany, and Spain have nearly stopped doing PPPs, which means that to develop the infrastructure, we are just left either by the user-paid schemes or by the increase of tax. Increase of tax, the people are not so happy with that. So what we did, we proposed to, you take the second point, spirit and objective of Cica position paper. We look at the long-term nature of infrastructure investments. I mean, the one which can be funded by users and the one which should be funded by taxpayers. Because you can very well decide that something which is free of charge become tolls. And I remember, I was surprised, the first question that Angela Merkel, when she came to power 10, 12 years ago, she asked the German population, what are the services that you have paid by the government that you can do yourself or paid for it. And then it changed the way people approach some public services. So look at the long-term nature of the services with funding financing view. When you are working with IMF, they are not looking anything at the financing. They are not just interested. They are looking at the funding, and that's it. Is it the tax? Is it the user? And nothing else. The word financing doesn't appear in the IMF report. So, contribute to the reduction of risk and hazard, as I say, Fernando, is to decrease interest rate, and then training for public works manager. So, practically, the source methodology, you know, I don't come back. The second thing is more important, and you see that in the project is done normally when the cost-benefit analysis is positive. But what to put in the cost-benefit analysis? And this for us is now the key point. In the cost-benefit analysis, for the time being, there is nowhere the return, the financial return for the government. They consider that there are economic returns, social returns, but no financial returns except if it is a PPP and the SPV paid taxes to the government. Apart from that, nothing is considered. Or it is a main reason to do projects. So we have here something very important to develop. And integration of an environmental and climate imperative and strong governance, anti-corruption, and so on and so on. I don't come back at it. Then, what we have to do, clarify this matter of where the money comes from, funding, financing, who raise the loans, who reimburse the loans, and find new sources of funding. For instance, you have a concession reaching the end, and the state can just decide to keep the toll and to take the money to develop something else. Instead of becoming toll-free, the motorway can stay a toll road, but the money will not come to the former operator, it will come to the general, to a budget devoted to investments, for instance. And play with the guarantee. There is still room for improving the way to use a guarantee. Now we have to look at, well, it is a huge program, but norms and standards governing the private sector are not favorable to develop long-term finance. And for instance, you have in the accounting rules now, when you raise a loan, when the SPV raise a loan, all the money, all the costs, interest cost, has to be passed year after year, instead of being spread over the concession duration. In some case, the concession company is in the red, in loss position during 5 or 10 years, and no dividends can be offered to the investors. If you change the rule, as it was the case in Spain 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the interest rate was spread all along the life of the concession. It changed everything. So this is an example. So the prudential rules, the accounting standard should be changed. You imagine what it represents. Well, then for the public authority, the budgetary principles are not favorable to investment because the money which come from the good project, well prepared and well managed project, just fall into the general budget, and you cannot identify the money coming from a good project where it goes. except if it is a concession within the box of a contract. So we have to discuss the budgetary principle and public accounting rule to try to identify the money which come from a good infrastructure project. If I take the French example of the motorway network and the rail network, the motorway network is paying each year something like 4 billion euro to the budget. And the railway network is swallowing each year 13 billion euro, so paid through taxes. But for IMF, as it is financing, IMF doesn't make the difference. So we said with Roger, it is stupid, we have Cica to do something in this field. So this is why we are trying to prepare a model where you put in one box the economic calculation year after year, in another box just underneath the financial calculation as they are done from the contractor and the lender point of view. And the third box, which is new, is the budgetary calculation, taking into account not only the negative impact as IMF is doing, but taking into account the positive budgetary consequences of the project externalities if the project is well done. So I think we can work on this model. I've prepared already a sketch, just if you are interested to have a look at it. And but the problem is that it has to be efficient. It has to be accepted by the public authorities, the World Bank and IMF. So it is a matter not of months, but of years of discussions between these different bodies. But I think that the impending financial crisis, which should come in within 1, 2, 3 years, will trigger a new way of thinking in our dear official bodies like IMF and World Bank. So it is the moment, it is now we have to work now. Thank you very much.
Comments? Well, everybody agree that we are in a problem here. Of course, we have to work in different areas with the governments to change the accounting system, because also the governments, they treat the investment like a spend.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, because they spend in a highway, but all the incomes are in our place. So that's the problem.
Exactly, exactly.
For the financial ministers, that's the way. It's not spent. They have to balance the budget, and that's all. They don't look for long-term finance.
No, they are not looking in the future. And when I asked the IMF, what is the discount rate you consider? They told me, we are doing accounting. There is no discount rate, full stop. Yeah. So the money which is spent this year or within 20 years
is the same.
Is the same.
Yeah.
It is pretty stupid.
Stupid. Okay, Vincent. Well, we have finished the presentation of the position papers. So, Fanny, I think we should add the different comments for the different position papers, and then we resend to all the members. And after 3 weeks, we should recover the different positions. And before we disseminate with our stakeholders, because you know that all our stakeholders ask and they want to know our position in the different topics we have talked. So for us, it's important that you agree or you disagree, but you have to have an opinion before we disseminated your position. At the end, it's your position. So, so now we have the communications report, Fanny, our next meeting, and we prepare to finish our assembly. Yalvin? Okay. Ah.
Okay, so just a few words about communication, because we have made some few achievements since last board meeting. So the first one is that we developed, following the approval by the board, the digital newsletter for Cica. So here you can see the templates. So we will be working with a free system, which is called MailChimp, and it's the same system that, for instance, Cmic has. So the advantage is that it's free, but still we could design our own templates, which is what we did. And then we will be working with a self-registration system, which has two advantages. The first one is that we will be free from any legal issues, because people, by registering by themselves, they agree to give us their data. So the main objectives of this new newsletter is to publish one each month. And then the second advantages that I would like to mention is that with this self-registration system, we will be able to reach directly the contractors, which is one of the main Cica objectives. We will be also able to contact directly all the people that we meet in the MDBs, OECD, etc. They can receive our information. And it is also a way to increase our database. So as before, we will have the possibility to include all our Cica analysis in this newsletter, and also reports and everything. But now we also will have, thanks to the system, the possibility to have dissociated lists depending on the contents we would like to send. So here you can see that we created an internal list and an external list. Then we can adapt our communication to the different targets. And you can see that it's an efficient way to build the Cica database, because for each person who registered, they enter the data, and we have a specific profile for each person. And also, at the bottom of the newsletter, you will have a link to our different Cica LinkedIn accounts and Twitter accounts. So talking about the social networks, this is our LinkedIn page. Nothing has changed much on this. The objective is to try to grow our readers. The good news is that with our recent mission to Washington and hopefully this event, we already increased our numbers. And we should more systematically invite our contacts to follow us on this kind of, on the LinkedIn page and the Twitter page. So the Twitter page is new. It was decided following our last board meeting. I forgot to mention for LinkedIn, the new thing is that Cica President Jorge Mas now has an account. And this is our Twitter page. I saw many of you contributed to Treating with Cica. And it's the same objective as with LinkedIn. And then the last point in terms of communication tools is that we developed the certificates that you all received earlier. And we also developed, not new logos, they are the same, but we improved the quality of the logos, and we have it now in different colors, so now when we can organize events, we have the good quality. So just one word about the strategy for the communication. I think now we have all the tools in place for a global Cica communication strategy, and the fact that now we will have very soon approved position papers will be a good way to test and to try our communication strategy and by all its channels. And of course, we really welcome and encourage all of you to send us any information you would like to share with others, so we can serve the communication of your own associations and of Cica together. And of course, register for the new digital newsletter. So now we'll just say a few words about the next meetings, or maybe Jean-Louis, you want to say something now?
Okay, let me take your attention only a few minutes, because we had a very busy day, very busy afternoon, but the reports we have heard are very high quality reports. Huh? It means a lot of work inside the working group for a month, and we do not have to underestimate the quality of what we have, what you have produced. And I think we have now to disseminate what has been said by Fanny is very important. Now we have really an asset about a lot of subjects, and it has been very helpful last week. And when we met by the World Bank, it was very helpful to have these assets with us to explain. And I think our partner were impressed. Okay, so we have Cica. Cica has now an asset. But if you remember, sometimes last week we were asked about new technologies. Okay, what will be the impact of, what do you think about new technologies in your business? And I think it is for us now a kind of challenge, because I attended to the meeting, the B20 financing growth and infrastructure, very interesting, very well organized. And for the first time, we spoke about housing. The main subject is infrastructure, but your knowledge partners, as you said, put on the table the issue housing. And they said it is linked with infrastructure, and we are also representing companies building housing. Okay, so housing could be an issue for us in the next months, because when I read during the B20 meeting the recommendations of your knowledge partners, they said we have to promote the industrialization of the housing. Is it, what do we want? What does Cica think about this proposal of the B20 through the knowledge partners to develop the industrialization of the housing? Is it possible? When? Do we wish that or not? I think it is interesting to share, not now, but in the next month, about that between us. And I remember last year we were in Tokyo in June, and we met a ministry. We met, thanks to you, we had a very interesting meeting with your ministry of the construction. And he said, or you said to us, in the next 10 to 15 years, we will lose about 900,000 workers. Amongst 4 million people working for the construction business in Japan. I remember these figures, 3.9, 4 million people working in the construction sector in Japan. You will lose, okay, you said that, 900,000 people in the next 10 to 15 years. And I asked the ministry, how will you deal with that? You will not have any worker for doing the job. And he said, we will have higher productivity thanks to the new technologies. What an answer. How will it be achieved, this goal? And I think it is very interesting for us in the next month to share some information about that. I am sure that a lot of things happen in South Korea about the use of technologies, okay, drones, robots, new technologies. It is coming. It is coming. And I think in the next months, if we could share very informally about that, what happened in Japan, what happened in South Korea, what happened in Europe, what are doing the equipment producer, you know, I think it could be for the Cica a good opportunity to change the image we have and to speak about what will be our future and to attract new people by describing what will be the future of the construction sector. And I would be very happy if in the next months, until the end of this year, for example, we will have an assembly in Paris in November, if we could send to Fanny one page, only one page, you know, about what does that mean for your federation, for our company, what does that mean, the use of new technologies in the construction sector in the next 10 to 20 years.
Hello, Jean-Louis. See, I think it's an important point for Cica because we have to have an opinion about cities. The intelligent cities, what's that mean first? Second, at least in Chile, but I think it's in all the world the same, 90% of the people live in cities, and the problem is housing. And the infrastructure of cities is half of the total investment in infrastructure. So we need to work in that area. And also the technologies or innovate the technologies. If we think that we need an infrastructure investment for 30 years long in life, we need to think in the future. In the future, probably, as Joaquim Levy mentioned, probably in the future we don't have drivers, only with the controls, no drivers in our highways. So we need to think about the future in cities, in technological innovation. So I agree with you that we have to start thinking something about. We are going to be in Paris next month in the V20. So around that date, we can organize a meeting in Paris, for example. Fanny? Sergio?
Us doesn't make any change. We need to talk these things to the rest of the people, to the community, to the government, to the World Bank. That's what we must do. We cannot continue speaking all these important themes just between us.
The reason of the position papers. So we are going to add this new area, and of course, that's the reason of the communication system. So if you don't communicate, you don't exist at the end. So it's clear that we need we have been improving the communication system, but always is a special concern of us how to communicate better to our stakeholders. So fully agree with your idea, Jean-Louis. Carlos?
Here. Yeah, also, yeah, it is. Also fully agree. Innovation can be very attractive for people. And construction, as Octe says, it has the lowest inversions in innovation in terms of percentage, but has one of the higher impacts on people and well, environment as well. It's the big change companies and markets has to do. That is not only the bottom line. Now you have to talk about the triple bottom line. That's profit, people, and planet. That's very important, and I think construction has a lot to do. We live permanently in our use infrastructure, so it can be very attractive, and so completely agree, Charlie.
Hello. Well, Fanny, about our next meetings,
Yeah,
or next meeting?
You have the list of the main upcoming events of our members and the external events. I won't read all of them, but maybe Jorge, you want to make a little point about the invitation that Cica received to participate in the Macau event organized by China, Cica. So maybe you wanted to discuss this point, or not much?
No.
Okay. So that's the list of the next meeting. So we have the FIC General Assembly. You will have this meeting at the end of May. The EIC General Assembly will take place in Turkey in Bodrum in October. FIEC, I am not sure when your next meeting will be. They did not get the information yet. And these are the list of the external events. Do you want to add something?
Okay. Some question? Well, if not, if another topic or point that you want to add, because we are ready to finish our assembly, our first assembly here in Mexico. What? Yes. No. Well, only mention that in the board we have in the morning, we approve in general that we need the help for the team, for Fanny, to hire an engineer to help and to transfer the experience from Roger to a new, not a new, for a new young engineer. Of course, we are going to work in how we are going to finance that in detail, but the general idea was approved because it's clear for everybody that we have a lot of work to do, and it's good for Cica to strengthen and to have a good team to work. So, thank you very much for your attendance, and we are having our dinner at 8 o'clock, so we are going to move from the hotel at 7:30. The two meeting points in the hotels. So I see you later. Thank you very much. Sí. Okay. You can move to the buses.